I am delighted to be joining you for this session, how to solve the challenges of visibility and data quality. We have 34 minutes and 50 seconds to solve a problem that I have not seen solved in 20 years covering this industry, so no big challenge ahead of us. We have an awesome panel to talk you through this. I'm gonna let them each introduce themselves, and then I have a whole bunch of questions. By the way, I forgot to say, I'm Eric Johnson. I'm the technology editor at the Journal of Commerce. Thank you, your checks are all in the mail. But Shradha, do you wanna kick us off, please? Yep.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you all hear me all right? My name is Shradha Balakrishnan. I'm a product manager at Uber Freight. I've been there for a little over 2 years, and I'm really excited to be here today to talk about visibility and data quality. Thanks for having me.
Hey there, my name is Stefan Kalmund. I'm the CEO of Nexxiot, Swiss-based IoT company.
Hi everyone, my name is Tyler Hughes. I'm the CTO and co-founder at Vizion.
All right, so first of all, do we have the Slido capability in this room or no? Yes, no? Anyway, if you have a question, raise your hand. I would love to incorporate any questions you all have. I have a bunch sitting here on my phone. Shradha, you're sitting in an interesting position that to me is kind of the crux of the challenge facing the industry. You are both a consumer and a provider of data to customers, to shippers. How do you go about thinking about what you need to both buy and what you need to provide to them? How does it differ? What are the challenges? Only like 7 questions, so go ahead.
I was like, where should I focus? Yeah, I mean, definitely Uber Freight has, at our heart, we are a technology company. And, it comes from our Uber DNA. So as part of that, visibility, transparency, these are very much things that we have valued from the beginning. So with Truckload, for example, or LTL, the Uber Freight app was revolutionary in terms of bringing unprecedented visibility to our customers in real time. And we have since extended that across various modes. So from our customers' perspective, they expect data at their fingertips without having to leave the product that they're using. In our case, for example, our TMS. They expect not just truckload visibility, not just LTL visibility, but also international shipment visibility, and which is where our partnership with Vizion has really helped us expand what we're able to provide to our shippers. Prior to that, they would need to go to a carrier's website or a freight forwarder's website, and that took time, that was frustrating. The data is never stitched together across modes. And we've been able to solve that by bringing all that data into one product so they don't have to leave the product. I think, it's table stakes in some way, and yet we've been really far from that for many years. So I think that is what really has been our North Star in terms of solving over the last couple of years.
And what was the process that you undertook to figure out what the right sort of international visibility data was to complement what you had from, presumably from the app that was in the driver's hands on the domestic side, right?
Yes, and it has been a pain point for a long time for us to how to get good quality data for international shipments for our customers. And just like with our North America or Europe focused on the surface transport metrics, we have a variety of criteria that we use in evaluating various partners and their data quality. For example, top of the list is check call compliance. What percentage of the check calls that we expect are we getting for certain shipments? The second one is consistency. If you're expecting the check call to happen at a particular place, are we getting it at that location? Another really important one is latency. If the vessel is to depart at 1 o'clock, how long before that do we know that was the estimate? And how long after that do we know that was actually when it happened? So we have a long list of things we use. We have a very, very specialized data analytics team that helps us evaluate all our data providers and holds them to a really high standard. So that is some of the criteria that we use.
Great. Lots more questions, but let me move on to Stefan. Your customers are, who are you selling into? And you have a view of the world that's slightly different than maybe the quote-unquote visibility providers, pure play visibility providers, in that you are tracking assets and providing real-time location of that, right? Do I have that correct?
So in a world where probably less than 5% of all shipping containers and rail cars have been digitized, we wanted to develop a device, and I just brought you a sample where we could actually create the data ourselves to be in control of the quality. So last year we installed 1.2 million of those devices on shipping containers, which are traveling in more than 160 countries. So we wanted to have a device out there which survives some of the harshest environments in the world and would be sending data also for more than 10 years. So our clients are the carriers, the asset owners, but it's really about the software, the data insights we can actually gain for better quality. How can we help our clients then to drive profitability up?
So what was your thesis in terms of laying out the vision for the company? What was your thesis that was not existing in the market that could be answered by what you were trying to do?
So I think, the data aggregators are very complementary. There's a reason we're sitting up here with Vision. There's a lot of things Vision sees we don't actually see. But it's also the other way around. We actually, take for example, a port. A data aggregator will see the gate in, gate out movements. We will actually see within a port, within certain geofences, whether a container has been moved, and then we will also detect additional contextualized events. So, for example, a door openings, which shouldn't have happened in the port of Rotterdam, because maybe that specific container should have only been opened in Shanghai. So I think there's a natural complementary work here.
And just to give a little context, I think, because Stefan is being somewhat humble about this, you were part of the first rollout of a box fleet, container dry box fleet, being outfitted completely, in this case Hapag-Lloyd, with sensors that were trackable at any given moment. So I found that very interesting as someone who covers this space, because we have seen other carriers now announce similar initiatives. Where do you think we are in terms of, I mean, you gave a number a second ago, but where do you think we are maybe like philosophically in terms of the industry embracing full, the entire dry box fleet being essentially a smart device platform type of?
So I think it's fair to say that the entire industry is very excited about it, but there's two major challenges. It's relatively simple to innovate device. It's really challenging to actually produce it at scale and then import it around the world. So we had to install it in 450 ports and terminals around the world, and that was 1.5 million shipping containers in less than 2 years. So that's, logistically just moving devices around the world to actually catch a container, and you have less than a minute to install it, or a rail car less than 5 minutes, is quite challenging. And then second of all, it's also a major investment. We're talking about hundreds of millions of an investment, which are then gonna have to prove themselves to deliver an ROI in less than 2 years in today's world. No one is gonna start a project if the ROI is 5 or 10 years. So doing both things, demonstrating that you can actually deliver it at scale, and then second of all, also delivering the business case, and we had to underwrite the business case also, is a significant investment for most companies.
Okay, Tyler.
Yes.
Last I checked, you are the CTO of a company that provides visibility data. So I assume, and I'm making a big presumption here, that data quality is sort of important to you?
It's a little bit of a thing with us. Yeah,
All
I
right.
would say that.
So, this is the crux of what we're talking about today, right? The challenge is not just of visibility, of providing a product, of providing a number on a screen to make someone happy, but like actually understanding how you improve the quality of that data. How do you think about that challenge in catering to the set of customers that you cater to?
I think the simplest answer I could say is there is no one-size-fits-all solution or definition for how to build, measure, or maintain data quality around visibility. I think for us, a lot of how Kyle and I got started with creating Vision in the first place was largely the same motivation. We had a desire for better data, and we didn't see it in the market. We wanted to go out there and get it. This was late 2018, so things were a lot different than you would see them today. And I think we've seen things shift a lot from early days of just can you get me visibility data? Can you put it into a pipe and send it my way? Which, for a good while, I think was kind of where the entire industry was just happy to sit. And, many customers were as well. We've seen that really start to evolve in a big way. One reason being just, as everyone has had more exposure to visibility data, better experiences with it or worse experiences with it, they've come to learn and understand what do they need, what do they expect from visibility, and more importantly, what is their definition of visibility. So it's quickly become now from just get the data out of the different systems, try to clean it up a little bit, send it over the wire, to really starting to take a hard look at, well, one, like I said, what does visibility mean to you? What does data quality mean to you and your business? And how do we build that? How do we build out the mechanisms to continuously track, measure, and provide that clarity around those definitions, regardless of how it may change customer over customer, right? Because, like I said, everyone is different. We've got plenty of overlap, but at the end of the day, we're all kind of using it for slightly different things.
So it's a great point, and that's actually super interesting to hear, and I don't think I've heard anyone phrase it like that in terms of the proficiency in understanding your own needs and how that translates into determining is what I'm getting of a high enough quality for me to actually utilize. Can you give an example of how that's progressed since you first started out on this journey? Like, what's an interaction you've had with a customer where you're like, oh, they really get that quality of that data that they're using is actually superior to what it was?
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, I could make a broad generalization and say, 80 to 90% of our customer base now actually cares about this and wants to understand how are we measuring data quality, how are we providing those insights back to them so they can have their own kind of visualization and representation of what that means to them. But I think more importantly, it's about building trust, building confidence, and making sure that we are able to put ourselves in front of our customers. I mean, Shradha here, Stefan as well. We look to take all of the data points that we have now and use each of them together to provide better contextualization, better enrichment, better data overall. Like I said, where before it was just, can you get the data from somewhere and put it into some kind of a rough structure where some basic enrichment, some basic standardization was good enough. Now it's truly, what's the latency on the event that I saw? How off were the timestamps that I actually am seeing? Right? These are things that really start to matter. Location accuracy is another huge one that we spend a lot of time investing back into. These are all things that early on, folks didn't really care too much about as long as you were able to pipe the data to them. Now it's really taking a hard look back at those values and trying to make sure that, one, we are doing all we can to provide accurate data, but similarly that we are building trust and confidence, and we're putting our money where our mouth is in terms of helping them understand that we truly are providing the best quality data you can get.
Can I add something to that? One thing that we and our customers really appreciate is that the visibility solutions we provide, thanks to our partners like Vizion, we have several others, is that it relies on multiple sources of data. So there isn't a single point of failure. Historically, there was an over-reliance on just the carrier. But right now we need terminal data, we use AIS data. So it's our customers really like the fact that we show them where we're getting this data from. We get cleaned up and scrubbed data from Vizion, and we, on top of that, apply our own logic to clean it up further and ensure that the locations are indeed the ones that match our customers. So I think from a few years ago, to answer your question, the quality that customers see is vastly different. And we have data aggregators to thank for that.
Yeah, I think this is a point I brought up in a session earlier where we talked about how I use data quality, or how we use data sources as reporters, right? Is you're very susceptible if you're relying on one person's anecdote. You're very susceptible if you're using a single data provider that's not capturing a representative amount. So how do you how do you think about the matrix of assembling kind of these different data points? And also, I think it's really actually interesting that you're feeling demand from your customers to show the source of data, because that's also, I think, extremely important, right? Like there's so much data flowing around, to know, to kind of have the provenance of that data attributed, I think is very important as well.
Yeah, if you take the example of international shipments, historically, I think the bar has been so low, unfortunately, that like what we're able to provide now, like right now if you come to our TMS and want to track an ocean shipment, we are getting updates 4 times an hour. So, if you're seeing something going from the port of Houston to somewhere in Europe, you're actually seeing tiny dots, which is truly unprecedented from our customers' perspective, and they really appreciate that. Not that anyone is looking constantly, where is my container? But if there is a high-risk shipment, we have predictive analytics, again, powered by our data providers as well, that'll tell you when something is at risk. So, your customer and your consignee on the other end can be ready, knowing that there's a storm brewing and so forth. There's a very proactive alerting system in place as well. So we're able to do a lot more on top of good quality visibility data. And that is truly when the game-changing nature of this starts. Layering on top of that, something that was being discussed in the previous session, AI. We're still working on that in-house because, you need to have really, really high accuracy. It's almost like the same standards we apply to data quality apply to AI, and it's still very much work in progress. But you can think of all the solutions that can be built on top of really good visibility data that can be transformative to the business.
And Eric, I would like to add to that. If you are the organization who actually creates the data for clients, so let's take somebody like Hapag-Lloyd, actually suddenly you can offer door-to-door monitoring, which you could never do. So actually it opens up also a lot of new business models. So owning actually the data then takes you also to different transport modes, because now suddenly it's not just about vessel tracking, but you can actually follow the container then when it goes on the trailer or when it's then loaded on the rail. So there's lots of new business models, and that's only possible if you really own the data and have the quality under control.
So that's actually a great lead-in for a question I wanted to ask, and maybe we'll start with you, Stefan, is historically there's been a massive variance between modes, quality. I mean, Shradha, you talked about this to start with. How has that situation been improved in recent times, whether it's through what you're doing, whether it's through what Vizion is doing, in terms of normalizing that, variance in quality, format, all sorts of different, and it's not just mode, it's geography too, right? Like data is better in some geographies than others.
So I think we're still at the beginning, because as people are collecting more data, they're just about to learn what you can actually do with the data, but just a possibility to do automatic detection of transport modes. So you just said, it sends like 4 times, an hour. Our device, for example, sends every minute if it's necessary, and then it changes again to 5 times an hour or once a day if it sits on a vessel. So just having that ability, I think, certainly, one of the layers. And then, Tyler, you said earlier also, you cannot just, depend on one source of data. This is why you then start merging different data streams. So on one side, you actually have control of the data because it's sitting on the asset level. And then on top of that, you keep on adding layer after layer until you have a quality you really can then sell to a client, because ultimately take a carrier like Hapag-Lloyd, they're selling better service, and that will become a differentiating factors. People or shippers who have an ability to go to a carrier who gives them full transparency over the full door-to-door transport mode will probably have an advantage over somebody who can only give them control over a certain part of the trip.
Yeah, I'd say that's a really great point, and it really does highlight kind of why it is necessary to have not just data aggregators, but I think collaboration, right? It's companies like Vizion and Nexxiot working together. It's companies like Uber Freight and Vizion working together. I think what we've found as we have gotten more mature over the years is that with more data comes more responsibility. Of course, I got to say that line. But at the same time, it gives you a lot more power, it gives you a lot more flexibility, but it is all in how you wield it, right? And so I think having access to that data, having access to all those points gives you the ability to take those situations where you don't see events reported from a carrier, you don't see events reported from some other single data source, where you're now able to fill in those gaps with additional events and then provide reconciliation on top of that using other kind of reinforcement data sets around that.
Yeah, there's two additional points I wanted to make. In the session earlier, we mentioned that it's mainly about looking at the exceptions. So you're less focused on what works anyway well, but you want to have very quickly heat maps of what doesn't work on either an asset level or on fleet level. And then second of all, the main reason why the technology is today being implemented is you really want to drive up profitability in your organization. So you want to find out which parts, either which journeys are less efficient, or where is cargo being congested, or where there's cargo theft or whatever. It always comes down, ultimately you want to drive up profitability or deliver a better service to your clients, which ultimately also is going to bring more business and therefore is also going to drive up profitability. So I think the main reason why we do quality or data quality is because you want to become better in managing your own operations and therefore become more efficient.
Yeah, to that point, there may be people in the audience who are not in transportation, who are not in logistics. How is visibility data being translated to things that they care about? Whether it's, I'm just throwing a couple, someone in finance, someone in customer service, someone in, I don't know, something I'm not even thinking about. Like, Shradha, are you able to reference some experiences from clients where they're using it beyond just the logistics team?
Yeah, for sure. When we are doing, for example, demos to prospective customers, there are people beyond the immediate decision makers who are in the room. And there's almost a wow factor as to what they can do with the information we're providing. Proactively knowing when there's going to be like a 2-day delay, for example, is helping so many downstream teams. The number of people on the ops team that are typically asked, where is this container right now, or like, where is it expected to arrive? All these are costs. If you're able to minimize the number of people who need to be proactively monitoring this by us proactively letting you know where the container is when you need to know that it's deviating from the schedule, that can be just a simple operational savings for you right there, at a very, very basic level. So we have customers, outside of like the logistics decision makers who also find a lot of value in this kind of visibility solution for sure.
Tyler, do you want?
Well, I think if any of you were here for our first session of the day, we gave a pretty good demo of, I think, what happens when you marry good visibility data with other large data sets that are not necessarily rooted in supply chain and logistics. I think that's what I've found most interesting over this last year as we really started to kind of explore and build out the TradeView project. What we're finding there is this unlocks and brings visibility data into the fold for hedge funds, for insurance. There are so many other parties out there who can benefit from good visibility of global trade as a whole to make other decisions that are not necessarily related to the movement of their own freight, right? Obviously, one very...
Wait, so we want hedge funds involved in global logistics? Are we sure about that? I'm just kidding.
I'll hold.
I know there's some
all this
investors
for
in
now.
the crowd, so I'm just giving you a hard time. No, it's a great point, right? Like,
no,
I think the financial industry has been crying out for better, more reliable data around in-transit shipments, and so yeah, you make a great point.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, to the same end, customer service orgs can benefit greatly from this type of insight, right? Having that extra bit of info, having the ability to be able to plan ahead or have an understanding of what to expect and be able to communicate that back to your customers more quickly, invaluable, hugely invaluable.
Yep. Okay, so it's been a lot of kumbaya up here so far, a lot of amazing cases. Let me throw some things in my 18 years of reporting on the visibility market that I feel are still kind of at play, right? Like maybe to lesser degree than they were. Famous case, forwarder gets arrival notice from the carrier that's very different from the arrival notice that they get from their visibility provider. That's maybe different from what it says on the port terminal website. Second, great visibility into port, zero visibility in the terminal, get some visibility of when it gates out, lose it on the drayage side. Are we any nearer to solving those kinds of things? Because I can tell you, I still have lots of shippers, especially, and forwarders, calling me and telling me those things have not been systematically cured.
Will you tell them to call me?
Anyone out there? Yeah.
No, I think it is still a challenge. You know, it's not a bed of roses that we're laying on here. We've not solved all the problems, and we're probably not anywhere close to making sure that that's approachable inside of this decade, right? We've got a lot more work to do. But I've seen some huge strides made just over the last few years as we've been able to get back together and have these types of conversations. And you know, more companies like us are working together. More companies in the industry in general are starting to kind of see the light in that, you know, none of us really benefit from living inside of our own data silos. We all reap benefits from bringing those data silos together and figuring out how to bring true kind of I always end up saying this, I feel like every talk, but full spectrum visibility back to the customer, right? No one wants to sign up and work with 20 providers to get all of their visibility data in there, because now at that point you've signed yourself up for all the responsibility of maintaining data quality, right? You've completely
You have to cobble that all
pulled
together.
the buck all the way back to yourself, right? I think it is important to, one, be mindful of the companies that you choose to work with, that you choose to partner with, that you choose to share data with. But you know, looking past that, I think there is very much the element of finding a way to, inside those relationships, build out that trust but verify type of approach, right? And I think that's ultimately how responsibility is shared between groups, right? If we're thinking about, you know, who owns data quality, right? Who at the end of the day is truly responsible for that? The answer is everybody. We all are. We're all on the hook for it, right? Just in different ways. And I think if we keep that in mind and we're able to share notes, we're able to give, you know, consistent feedback with each other, and also understand what our data structures look like, understand how we are utilizing the data that we're getting or that we're sharing with each other. That creates a much better ecosystem in which I think everyone is able to operate more efficiently, with more accuracy, with more confidence.
And I would add to that, if, you know, today 5% of all shipping containers and rail cars are digitized. If we're sitting here in 5 years, it's probably 95% which are digitized. So the question is only who will be paying for it. Will it be the shippers or the asset owners? Will it be the carriers or the Class 1 railroads or the BCOs? And you know, with that comes then also whoever pays for it will also be owning the data. To your point earlier, you know, and having an ability to actually sell that data to insurance companies, hedge funds, other people, you can only do that if you actually own the data. And this is also one of the reasons why Hapag-Lloyd decided to equip their entire fleet, because they actually wanted to be in control. And you know, the challenge might be that a lot of those carriers will also become data aggregators in the future. Then there's lots of competition, but certainly owning the data is very interesting for a lot of the asset owners.
It's an excellent point that you make there, and I think for me, it kind of harps back to, I think we had a conversation about this a couple weeks ago, in that sometimes it feels a lot like logistics companies, software providers, that we're ultimately kind of subsidizing a lot of the innovation that happens in this space and improving data quality, improving the experience around working with visibility data. I think you're actually in a very unique position where you've been able to kind of split that a bit more, and that, you know, it's maybe not all subsidized by you anymore, right?
Yeah.
I would say that maybe shippers over here will agree with me. I think shippers are willing to pay. This is something that actually translates to real costs on their side today because they don't have visibility. So if we can show them how this is saving costs for them, I think they're willing to pay, and we're in fact experimenting with that. You know, especially when we're a 4PL for a customer, we have humans trying to onboard a dray carrier somewhere in Australia. Good luck with that, right? And now if we are able to have a company like Vizion onboard that carrier and get that data for us, that's saving us like a lot of headache and time, even on the Uber Freight side when we're a 4PL for a shipper. And that translates to savings for the customer. So I do think that there are models there. I wanted to speak to the issue around data silos and fragmentation. I think there's a very long way to go in the industry to address that, but I think there's hope. Just today, we announced the SSE Scheduling Standards Consortium. Uber Freight is a part of, I think it's 10 different brokers and TMS providers who have come up with standards that help automate dock scheduling, right? And we are going to be using that.
You can read about that on joc.com right now, actually, too.
Excellent. So, that is an example of how quote-unquote competitors can come together to set and improve standards that'll be an advantage for everyone. And I think with visibility, we're not there yet, but that's what I would love to see more of. And we are challenging companies like Vizion to push the boundary there, right? And
we welcome it. I mean, that's what gets us better, right? And I think, going back to figuring out how do you choose a partner, right? I think for us, we are highly motivated by criticism, for lack of a better term, right? We want to hear the good and the bad, because oftentimes that's the only way we're actually going to see real improvement show up inside the visibility product.
Yeah, I think the point I made about have we not come as far as maybe we think, the alternative to that is the expectations are just that much higher than they were 15 years ago, and we've actually come a lot farther than we probably realized. Now, you could make the case that the only reason visibility providers exist and that 3PLs that need to provide visibility is because the carrier data has not been solid and reliable enough, too latent, right? All the things that you talked about at the outset. If on the ocean side, Stefan is right, and 5 years from now, the vast majority of containers are actually equipped with a sensor, how does that change the picture of the role that Vizion plays, the role that 3PLs play, the role that, right? I mean, because I don't think it makes you go away, but it changes the nature, right?
And if I can just add on top of that, what happens if not only all the containers are being digitized, but what happens if visibility is actually offered for free? That makes it even more challenging because now suddenly you need to be coming up with additional services. So it's almost like a freemium model. The pure visibility is for free.
Because some companies will offer it for free and others will believe it's a premium.
And I think I disagree a little bit with what was said earlier, that shippers will actually like to pay for it. No, I think they're actually going to expect it for free. And the question is, which of the carriers, which of the asset owners can actually offer it as a differentiating factors. And then, companies like Vizion who have actually something like TradeView, that's a lot more than visibility. That provides then insights, and that could be, a premium model then, which is being sold on top of visibility.
And I mean, I think it's a great question. For one, I think just going back to just if Stefan is right, my life becomes significantly easier, right? I've got a lot more data at hand that is very accurate and allows me to be even more pinpointing accurate.
So you're not spending time on the cleaning up
Exactly.
on aisle 3, but you're actually
makes data quality look significantly better in my eyes, right? So it's only a good thing for me. Even going back to the point of, let's say carriers decide to make visibility free or other providers decide to make visibility free. That's great. That's fine. The truth is, all of them can make it free. They're never going to build it in the same way. It's always going to need some level of translation. It's always going to need some level of contextualization. It's always going to need some level of enrichment. Those things never stop. And if you are in a position where you are using multiple providers and you need to get data from multiple sources, it's foolhardy, in my opinion, to try to go it alone. It's not a pain that I wish on anyone, right? We took this on as a project, and when we first got started, we thought this was going to be simple.
You keep pushing that rock up the mountain, huh? And the mountain keeps getting higher.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it was easy to assume early on that this was going to be a kind of a one and done challenge, right? We were going to come through and we were going to build out some solutions, and APIs were going to come out and everything was going to be hunky dory. It was for a little bit. Like we said earlier, people got smarter, people got more sophisticated, people had deeper expectations and understandings about what visibility was, what it means to them, and what they expect from it. And we've had to continue to meet those expectations and find ways to prove it, right?
Well, we have 15 seconds left, so I'm not going to ask another question unless you can each answer it in 3 seconds each. Fantastic conversation. Shradha, Stefan, Tyler, really enjoyed it. Thank you for including me, Vizion, and it was great to see you all. Thank you all for your participation and attendance.